By the late 9th century, Rome was no longer the spiritual heart of Christendom. It was a battlefield. The papacy, once seen as a sacred office, had become a political weapon fought over by warring noble families, foreign kings, and rival armies. Of whom whoever controlled the pope controlled land, wealth, armies, and legitimacy. Bishops were not just religious leaders, they were power brokers. The pope was not just God's representative, he was a kingmaker. Bribery, intimidation, betrayal, and assassination were part of daily life inside the Vatican, and popes often ruled for only months before being overthrown, imprisoned, or killed. In this violent atmosphere, old grudges never died. They only waited. One of those grudges centered on Pope Formosus. Formosus had once been respected, even admired. Before becoming pope, he had been a diplomat and missionary, navigating the dangerous politics of Europe. But when he took the papal throne in 891 AD, he stepped directly into a brutal struggle between two rival powers, the Spoleto dynasty of Italy and the rulers of the Holy Roman Empire. Formosus chose sides, supporting enemies of the Spoleto family and crowning rival kings. To his supporters, he was a skilled political strategist. To his enemies, he was a traitor who had betrayed Rome and threatened their power. Among those enemies was Stephen VI, a man who owed his position to the very faction Formosus had tried to destroy. When Formosus died in 896, his enemies did not forgive him. They waited. And when Stephen VI became pope only months later, he decided that death would not protect his rival. In January of 897, Stephen ordered something that had never been done in the history of Christianity. He commanded that Formosus's tomb be opened. Gravediggers pulled the body from its grave. It had been buried for nearly 9 months. The corpse was badly decomposed, skin darkened, limbs stiffened, the stench overwhelming. Yet it was washed, dressed in the ceremonial robes of a pope, and carried through Rome like a grotesque mockery of a religious procession. It was placed in the Basilica of St. John Lateran, seated on a throne as if still alive. A dead man was being prepared for judgment. To make the spectacle complete, a young deacon was forced to stand beside the corpse. His job was to speak for the dead pope, to answer charges that Formosus himself could never respond to. The court was filled with bishops, priests, and nobles, all watching in stunned silence, knowing that if they spoke out, they could be next. Pope Stephen VI stood before the rotting body of his predecessor and began to shout. He accused Formosus of crimes that blended theology, law, and revenge. He claimed that Formosus had illegally become pope, that he had betrayed Rome, that he had violated sacred vows. Stephen screamed at the corpse as if it could feel shame, as if it could tremble, as if it could suffer humiliation. The deacon answered weakly on behalf of the dead man, reciting legal phrases while standing inches from a decaying body. It was a nightmare, masquerading as justice. Everyone in the room knew this was not a real trial. The verdict had been decided before the corpse was ever exhumed. Formosus was found guilty. His papacy was erased. Every ordination he had performed was declared invalid. Every priest he had appointed was stripped of legitimacy. The church was being rewritten, not by truth, but by vengeance. Then Stephen ordered something even more horrifying. The corpse was stripped of its papal robes. 3 fingers of the right hand, the fingers used to bless, were cut off. The dead pope was symbolically stripped of his authority even in death. The mutilated body was dragged from the church and dumped into the Tiber River, as if he were a criminal whose memory needed to be erased from the world. But history refused to obey Stephen VI. The corpse washed ashore days later. A monk secretly recovered it and buried it, believing the dead pope had been wronged. Soon, rumors spread through Rome that miracles were happening at Formosus' resting place. People whispered that God had condemned Stephen, not Formosus. The public, already disturbed by the spectacle, turned against Stephen. Riots broke out. The same man who had humiliated a corpse was now dragged from power. Stephen VI was imprisoned. Within months, he was strangled to death in his cell. Later, popes overturned the Cadaver Synod. Formosus was restored. His name was cleared. His burial was honored. The church quietly tried to pretend the trial had never happened. But it had. A pope had been placed on trial after death. His body had been mutilated. His memory had been attacked. And for a brief, horrifying moment, the church had revealed how far it was willing to go to destroy an enemy. The Cadaver Synod was not madness. It was power. And it proved that even in death, the wrong enemy could never truly rest. The Cadaver Synod was meant to erase a man. It was meant to strip Pope Formosus not only of his authority, but of his dignity, his memory, and even his right to rest in death. By dragging his corpse into court, mutilating it, and throwing it into the river, Pope Stephen VI believed he could rewrite history itself. That power, once seized, could even reach beyond the grave. But history has a way of judging its judges. Stephen VI was overthrown, imprisoned, and quietly strangled. The very forces he had unleashed, fear, outrage, and the hunger for vengeance, consumed him in the end. The trial he staged to destroy his enemy became the thing that destroyed him. And so, the Cadaver Synod remains one of the darkest chapters in human history. A reminder that when power becomes more important than truth, even the dead are not safe. If you want more stories of forgotten crimes, corrupted power, and the moments when history revealed its darkest face, stay with us. Because sometimes the most horrifying true crime stories didn't happen in back alleys or dark forests. They happened in palaces, churches, and halls of authority, where no one was supposed to bleed.